Well, it's one of the best written scripts I had read for years, and I certainly, and then met up with De Palma, and he obviously shared the same opinion as I did. And after all, I think that Mamet is probably, with Shepard, certainly the contemporary living writers in America, the best.
And did you find that the...
Well, I think that the idea of having an older guy to teach Eliot Ness the ropes from the very beginning was, I think, the real stroke of the movie, you know? I'm sorry, it's a bit noisy in here because nobody thought this was going to work. Robin, for example, Robin Hood was, yes, certainly heroic, but what was interesting was to write something about a hero who's finished over the hill. And although it's interesting what films are successful in America and what is not. For example, the Robin and Marian had no success in America, and I liked the film. The Name of the Rose had no success, and it would appear that it's something to do with not liking certain things that could appear to be ugly or unpleasant to look at, and certainly in the case of The Name of the Rose, and in, say, Robin and Marian, to do with how a hero over the hill. Well, in answer to that, I've never received any scripts that called for me to play a villain that were really interesting. I played a film called The Offense. I don't think the person could be called a villain, but no, you're right. Perhaps I'm just too nice. No, I was just being facetious. I'm kidding, actually. No, it's never come about. I would be perfectly happy to play a villain if you could find one for me. Well, first of all, Hitchcock, in fact, gave very little directorial advice to me as an actor, and yet we got on famously. I know that Brian is a bit of a disciple of Hitchcock, but in this case with The Untouchables, with Brian, he was, I must say, very, very considerate and helpful with the actors. And we had quite a bit of discussion before we started. He very much wanted the Malone character to be the old teacher with the three guys. And this was very much how we worked off screen and on screen, and he was very supportive in that way, keeping them, you know, on their toes all the time. And he had infinite patience, I must say. But then again, I think that if one can make one comment about this script, the film, The Untouchables, I think it was a very good choice for De Palma, because it involved him with very, I think, well-delineated characters that you could feel some sympathy for. I feel in these preceding films there's a tendency to distance you a bit from the people, but not in the case of The Untouchables. A lot of that's to do, of course, with the actual writing. Well, Timothy Dalton's an excellent actor, and I'm sure he doesn't need any advice from me, but I think primarily he should get a good lawyer and be sufficiently well protected for his future. Retain as much humor off and on as possible, because it's, I think, one of the saving graces of the part. Your own particular humor, I mean. And I haven't seen the film, and it would be easier for me to make a more objective comment if I had seen it. But I wish him every success with it. Well, in the case of Malone and the Untouchables, I think it's mainly because the villainy is so well set up that one wants to see some form of reprisal and justice. And it reverts back again. In fact, you touched on it yourself with the characters' writing. One would like to feel, yes, that it's also partly how one plays the part, too. The way that Mamet has set it up and giving you the introduction of Eliot Ness as a young, rather naive and fair, honest chap, and that introduction coming into that very opening sequence with the little girl in the bar and blowing up with a briefcase, you are immediately drawn into, obviously, a situation that is horrendous and bloody. And the history bore that out, too, in Chicago, with all the deaths that when the 2 or 3 or half a dozen, whatever the gangs they were, breaking each other up. So it was always going to be very bloody, whatever the outcome. And the policeman, in this case Malone, has been so long in the service that he has witnessed it all, which was another stroke of Mamet's, to have him reluctant to go back in to start with, what's his name, Ness, because he'd been there before and all he wanted to do was really stay alive. And then some other changes registered, the fact who Ness was, how he was, and really, really how things work in truth anyway. That somebody cares enough to attempt to do something about something. Oh, yes. Well, I always felt that one had been playing character parts before anyway. It just would appear that one is playing an older character part and mentor, say in the case of, certainly in The Name of the Rose, with the young boy, and in the case of The Untouchables. No, I think it's, as I say, I get a crack at most of the stuff that's going along, and whatever, win or lose, fail or success, the decision is always my own. As for me playing these roles, as again I said earlier, it's a case of finding something that's that provokes a response in me and wants me to do it, whether it's something like Highlander or Malone and the Untouchables or Robin and Marion. It strikes a chord in me that I respond to. I think in the circumstances I would have been quite happy to push Nitti off the wall. But the dilemma then is put back to you, because you have to make the decision, not De Palma, who directed it that way, or Mamet, who wrote it that way. I presume Mamet, I'm maybe wrong here, I can't remember now if Mamet did. Yes, I think he did write that they threw him off the roof. it's a very individual taste. I mean, taking all the facts and what one was dealing with and witnessing and where the court was going or had been going as it was presented in the story, I personally would have been delighted to throw Frank Nitti off the roof. But I don't think that there's any doubt that the age doesn't really matter in terms of material, to me. The activity is something else. How much one, to be realistic, what one can do. I mean, obviously, Burt Lancaster's not going to do the Crimson Pirate, but there's certainly plenty of interesting roles just by, as you were saying earlier, the role of mentor or teacher or whatever. Many interesting characters in the 50, 60, 70 age group. Horses for courses. Life goes on, and there's you're playing younger and you play older, and then you get older and you play older parts, and it's as it is. There's no, I mean, I couldn't then, if you're talking about the younger actors or actresses appearing on the scene that one would feel that one's in any way competitive with them, it just doesn't arise. To answer the question on John Huston's remark about the political scene, I'm very interested in it and what's happening there, and what's happening in America at the moment too, actually. But I'm not, unless I was able to totally commit myself to the political scene, such as your President Reagan did, you can't go in as a sort of aficionado. When really you either do it 100% or you don't, I think. And I find, and also my experience with people who are in the political field in Scotland is not sufficiently secure because of the amount of international traveling I do, that I could possibly put myself in a position to say that I was voicing an opinion for them. I do have opinions. I feel that the independence of Scotland would be most desirable. I think it would be very difficult for them, and but be worthwhile in the long run. No, I think that we never discussed, I saw The Untouchables, obviously. I don't think anybody who's alive today didn't see it at some time or other in America, traveling through one place, because I've been all over America too, and all over the world. I mean, Robert Stack is like Muhammad Ali throughout the world with Eliot Ness. But there was no conscious discussion to try and update or make it more colorful or change all that, not to my knowledge, because the idea to take it right back, because it had had such a strong history and exposure to the world, it was obvious that one had to have a very clear, clean cut concept, which I think Mamet did. And starting, as I said, with making him quite virtuous, and then, but in the space of 2 hours, has to go the full gambit, then reaching the stage where he throws a man off the roof. And he does it in under 2 hours, actually. Well, we discussed it at length because De Palma and Mamet more or less felt that nobody was going to think, it was going to come as a surprise, especially the lead up to it chasing the chap out of the place with a knife. So it was going to be a bit of a shock when they discovered that he was going to get it then. And for the character to be able to say what he does say, we really felt, and in his house, and the way it had been geographically conceived, it was a marvelous way to express the determination and commitment of Malone at that stage, to make it a rather long crawl. And then during the shooting of it, De Palma had the idea of intercutting it with Capone at the opera and crying watching Pagliacci, which, with the overlap of the music and everything, I think worked very well. As far as the emotions for me were concerned, I was really more concerned with the congealed blood, with the hair on my chest and legs that was being torn out as I went up the floor of the corridor. Well, the idea was, of mine come to the church was really, the more I thought about it, that I felt that where he had been before in the preceding scene, and he had turned it down, the offer from Ness, then he must have gone through a very kind of troubled time, and I figured that if he was going to take him somewhere to really ask him the questions, which were rather, I thought it was one of the best written short scenes. It's only a page and a half, I think, that in a rather naked church was a perfect setting to get somebody to have taken an oath. And it would be the perfect place to take somebody like Ness. It wouldn't be lost on him, the significance of in the church. Other suggestions I don't remember about so much. I mean, just character, and we put a few ad-libs in, and one always does a certain amount of invention in the film. But I think in the instance of this one, that the main credit should go to De Palma and Mamet, or Mamet and De Palma. Well, I liked it was a young director, Australian Russell Mulcahy, who I think is marvelously talented, and I liked the idea of the story. It was so absurd, and yet had quite a lot of invention and fantasy about it. And it's not every day one gets a chance to play somebody that's 2,347 years old. And I liked the film. I thought it was just a little too long. It was unfortunate that it was not a success in the United States, but the film went out there and was literally dumped. It's interesting also that the film was in a very small theatre in London and has taken over £1 million and is still running there. It was a huge success in Paris. It appears that there's a kind of divergence between the American audience and the European, the gap seems to be opening. I mean, to digress for a second, the Name of the Rose, it has to be the first film, I think, in cinema history that took more money in West Germany than it did in America. And it took from October, say, I think 16th of October to about the 5th of February, 86 through to 87, it took something like 49 million Deutschmarks. And I'm not sure what it took in America, but it didn't get anywhere near that. But it relates to, I think, in part what I said earlier about guys who, they don't know how to put the film out. They don't know how to present it or sell it, as it were. And in the case of Highlander, was the same result. You should really ask the two producers of Highlander what happened to it in America, or 20th Century Fox, who distributed it as they distributed The Name of the Rose. Well, they're two marvelous actors, and what was unfortunate for me in the film was that I only had the last day of shooting and to work with De Niro. And during that scene, I'm dragging Costner away saying, don't listen to it. No, that was a pity because we had no experiences at all working together. We talked, obviously, when I was there, when we met up in Chicago. With Kevin Costner, I think he's a wonderful actor and very articulate, and he has a quality which I think is quite refreshing in that he has an openness, and there's quite a few of the younger American actors in my books have a tendency to what it is, they're more angry about things than they need to be, but he has more balance, and he has a certain kind of naivety in himself, which he uses extremely well. I think they're both excellent actors. I say it's just unfortunate I didn't get a chance to do anything with De Niro. Well, we went through that. I spoke at length with Brian, and we decided that he was a widower, and that they'd been two generations in the police, and his whole entire association had been police life. And Racine, where he lived, he kept the same house, and so when we got to the designer, you know, we put a bird's cage in it with no bird in it, and the old gramophone, and the dresser, and that was one of the reasons also that came out of the idea of the church, because, you know, he obviously was Catholic, and but one felt probably lapsed a bit, and he obviously had his own stash of liquor that he wasn't supposed to have, and so we utilized as much of these things to make him so that when he started, he was somebody that was out of it, and really rather tetchy with Ness when he first encounters him on the bridge. And then when Ness comes to him, we see the man, what he's become in his own environment. And then so that we had somewhere to go when he decides to go with him to the church. And from then on, Malone starts to fly, and in fact becomes a bit of a bore at times, telling them what to do and everything. In fact, we tried a couple of scenes where we went further than that, and Brian De Palma took it down a bit. But I was perfectly happy taking it whichever way he wanted to go. Well, my military experience, in fact, was naval. I went to the Navy when I was 16 years of age because I had spent my entire life waiting to go to the war, and it finished in 45, and I went in 46. And I had foolishly signed for 12 years and discovered that I was totally unsuited for it, to such an extent that I had ulcers. And I was invalided out after 3 years when I was 19. But not before I had been exposed to a great deal of the background, and I was at a place called HMS Excellent, which is in Portsmouth, which is a gunnery school where they bring people from all over the world to train them, and it's very hard on discipline. So one was very much exposed to that, so I was conversant with it. which I found helpful in terms of gun drill and marching and things like in scenes with, say, with Michael Caine, when we were doing The Man Who Would Be King, the marching in business and stuff that we worked out. I suppose one couldn't have done that without having had that experience. Well, I like very much the way De Palma films his scenes, particularly the point of view scenes. He makes the audience very, very aware of the geography and what you're seeing, and you're inside the action all the time. Some directors use lots of whip pan and jump cuts and a lot of like a mosaic, tiny pieces of film. I like his method of, it's quite epic, the space he uses in getting to what he wants and then taking you in with it. Really, I mean, his techniques and things really, they speak for themselves. It's nothing that I could really embellish on. But I think that sometimes maybe the blood and the violence he gets carried away with, but technically he has, I think, a marvelous sense of the cinema. No, well, no, I'm not going to fall into that one again. No, I'm not going to play it again, but, and there's no way that one is going to convince anybody to forget it. I mean, when I was just in the United States this last visit, my agent, who's got a 6-year-old boy, was talking about the films, and of course he was seeing the tapes for the first time, and of course that's like another cycle of an audience that and of course they'll obviously go through on to the next ones as well. So it as long as it is entrenched in celluloid, it will continue to I don't know when it will, I doubt if it'll end. I mean, it's quite remarkable actually that. Yeah, I have quite a few of the films that I like what I did. Parts of them, in some films, more parts than others. I did 3 films. I did the Robin and Marion and The Man Who Would Be King and The Wind and the Lion, all back to back. And they have a certain group association for me. And I like the films. I like generous parts of the films. I have another time I did like a film like The Hill and the Anderson tapes. And another time, and The Offense. And then a film like Fine Madness, which was by Irvin Kershner, was one of these ones again that people you keep hearing the story, well, it was before its time, but I mean the central character was so sort of iconoclastic that he was like almost unacceptable then, whereas today they'd say he was a pussycat. I think there's elements I liked in 5 Days, One Summer. No success with that, and well, there's a few. I can't remember all the names now.
We thank you very much for the time you've given us today, and it was lovely to have you here with us, if by satellite or any way at all. Thank you.
It's very kind. Thank you very much.